You know, in the Appalachian Mountains, in the backwoods, you don't see too many folks hang gliding. But Zeke decided that he was going to save up his money, and he got a hang glider. And Zeke hauled it up to the highest mountain, and he got all scrapped up and ran to the edge and took off in flight. Well, about the same time, Ma and Pa Hicks were sitting out on their porch swing and talking about the good old days when Ma spots the biggest bird they had ever seen. "Look at that, the size of that bird, Pa," she said. And Pa raises up and said, "Get my gun." And she runs into the house and brings back the pump shotgun, and Pa takes aim and bang, bang, bang. Well, the monster-sized bird just continued to glide out of sight. "I think you missed him, Pa," she says. "Yeah," he replied, "but at least I scared him to let go of Zeke." You know, it must have been a surprise for Zeke for his hang gliding flight to end like that. But life is full of unexpected answers and surprises. Just like Zeke's flight. Well, you know, Jesus' disciples, James and John, you know, they come to Jesus. Maybe like some of your kids, your grandkids. They say, "Hey, would you do something for me if I ask?" And they ask to be allowed to sit at his right and left hand in glory. In other words, they wanted the best seats in the house, places of honor and prestige, but they wanted to be appointed those spots not because they deserved them or earned them, but simply because they had influence, that they knew the boss's son. Boy, doesn't that story sound familiar? Well, Jesus said to James and John, "Wait a moment. Do you really know what you're asking for? Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized?" If you think that is a bad answer, that didn't quite go the way that James and John had planned, ponder the way God answered Job. You know, we read the book of Job and everything Job's going through and all the bad advice his friends give him, and we really, really hope that somewhere we're going to find why do bad things happen to good people. But you know, we open up this portion of the book, and that's not the answer that God gave. For starters, we're looking at, you know, the question of, well, who is God? You can go on the internet, right? You can go on the internet and find anything. Type in who is God? And you might get some good answers, like God is holy, love, Father, Jesus, Spirit, Almighty, omnipotent, merciful, more. But none of these answers give us a really full picture, give us all the information. In the book of Job, God keeps things simpler. Speaks to Job out of the whirlwind. God asked where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? In other words, where were you, Job, when I, God, laid the foundation of the earth? You know, the you and the I are really important. Well, I did spend a good part of my seminary education in a Presbyterian seminary, and once in a while, I do glean some important insights from John Calvin. In his book, The Institutes of Christian Religion, the renowned Protestant reformer unveils a guiding principle of his theology, his view of duplex cognito domini. Oh, big words, right? But, you know, it means twofold knowledge of God. Calvin argues that we know God as our creator, and we know God as our redeemer. And he anchors to this knowledge, you know, that there's an R in there, our knowledge of ourselves. Knowledge of God and knowledge of ourselves are connected and interrelated, according to Calvin, and we cannot have one without the other. Calvin begins by saying, without knowledge of self, there's no knowledge of God. And that's why God asked Job from the whirlwind, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Knowledge of self and knowledge of God are important. Who determined its measurements? God asked, surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? And what were the bases? And where are they sunk? And who laid the cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy? Now, following along with this, writing in the journal Interpretation, Pastor John R. points out that the voice in the whirlwind asks a series of questions that Job can't answer. And Anita just, took the beginning and towards the end of the list. It goes on, there's a lot of questions that God asks. And Job didn't know the answer to any of the questions because he's like us. He's finite. Only the infinite God knows. And this is perhaps the first word from the whirlwind. Job is creature. God is creator. And if we're creature, we're not the creator. And maybe we need to hear that more than Job did. We need to hear that because in our high-tech world, there are folks who begin to have God-like aspirations. Peter Thiel, one of the Silicon Valley high-tech priests, recently said in the Times Literary Supplement, humans are distinguished from other species by our ability to work miracles. And we call these miracles technology. Wait a moment. Technology may be helpful, but it is not miraculous. And, a lot of times technology solves some problems, but it creates others. we get some life-saving kind of devices, time-saving devices, but then we have factories that are creating pollution. We have narrow corporate interest. We have the marketing of personal information in a way that can hurt us as much as help us. Only God is a creator. Humans can be creative. We can develop marvelous technology, but we cannot work miracles. We weren't present when God laid the foundations of the earth. So we cannot do God's miraculous work. God is a creator of all that is, and that includes us. So what deep question does Job answer? Well, we got off to a good start with who is God. Could be answered in one word, creator. But how about the question of who are we? What does it mean for us to be human creatures? And God answers this in part as the one who put the wisdom into our inner parts and has given us understanding of the mind as the creatures who are made in the image of God. We are people who've been given wisdom and understanding, but it came from our Creator. And when we dig deep, when we really ponder, when we realize that we don't have all the answers, and we come to realize only God does. And it may not be the answers that we're hoping for. It may not be God disclosing what we would really like to know, but we're getting some very important questions answered here in the book of Job. Ron Miller tells of a day in class during his graduate studies that has lasted a long time in his memory. Miller's rabbi teacher was quoting from the Babylonian Talmud, and he reminded the class that we will be called to task on Judgment Day for the pleasures of God's world that we failed to enjoy. And right away, Miller's got his hand up. And he said, wait, perhaps, teacher, you wrongly read this passage. You didn't quite interpret it correctly. And the teacher just chuckled and just told Miller, hey, you're thinking like a Christian. And Miller was. He concluded, I had been reared with a spirituality of holy abstinence in which we get closer to God by getting further from the world, from material, from pleasure. And here was a theology of blessed participation in which we meet the divine by enjoying the beauties and the pleasures of life. As a great philosopher and religious teacher, remember last week I told you about Martin Buber? Here's another one of his gems. He said, the world is not an obstacle on the way to God. It is the way. We can have wisdom, understanding, the ability to search for answers as we live in relationship with God and one another. The world, though, is complex, and it is painful. But the God who laid the foundations of the world did so in order that there might be a world, and so that we might be in it. Our Creator wants us to live in relationship with the divine, and to share in God's wisdom, and to understand and be in love with the divine. I know you all remember theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking. He died last March at the age of 76. He spent his career exploring the universe. He inspired many people with his intelligence, humor, and insight into the Big Bang, and which many people believe happened when God laid down the foundation of the earth. Hawking knew how to focus. He was a man who was always looking for wisdom and understanding. But we also know something else about him. He had a crippling disease. At the age of 21, he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And after a throat operation in the mid-80s, he designed an electronic voice system which eventually allowed him to enjoy sophisticated computerized communication. And although Hawking relied on a wheelchair and a voice system, he was always connected to others. He was like us, says science professor Helene Millot. All too human and always dependent on others, whether humans or machines. The life of Stephen Hawking reminds us that none of us acts alone. Our being and acting require a network of complex support. And you know, for as brilliant as he was, he didn't know why bad things happen to good people either. The question, who are we, can be answered in part with the word social. We are social animals, created by God to be in relationship with God, but also relationship with one another. None of us can survive very long all by ourselves. We need the support, we need the accountability of others. And fortunately, God created a world in which we are wonderfully interconnected. A world in which God provides for all creatures, for people, for lions, for ravens. And the Apostle Paul built on this understanding when he said, you know, the church is like a body. We are many, but we are all one body in Christ. And individually, we are members one of another. And all this comes from a God who put wisdom into our inner parts and has given understanding to our minds. Still, you might be stuck and say, well, why did Job suffer? Why do we suffer? And it remains a mystery. But we really have found some profound answers. For we in Job discover that our Creator is the source of wisdom and understanding. And Calvin knew this when he said that the endowments which we possess cannot possibly be from ourselves, nay, that our very being is nothing else than subsistence in God alone. Knowledge of God as creator. Knowledge of ourselves as social beings. Connected to God. Connected to each other. When we put these two things together, we find some answers for who is God